just
it's gonna be
after a
it's gonna be hybrid.
Hybrid?
So it's
Yeah.
like a hybrid year.
But you can, because
There's gonna be some people there, some
and
people.
to open it.
Like I know, like what people are really worried about is young. She's like, she's expected to kind of be. I'll just give you my.
How are you doing? Well, thank you. Busy day?
That's hilarious. Gross.
Wondering about that.
Oh,
So they go so much more. Do they travel around together? Like a former rock band?
I remember reading about it in school, but I didn't realize that there was.
You know what? I think often it does.
Yeah.
It actually looks real bad.
Hey, Ben. Trying to figure out.
Oh my God, your son.
I didn't know the was open. Actually, I'm from the.
It's like, this would actually take.
Was that when you walked up?
Yeah.
Oh, I totally thought it was.
Oh, yeah, that's great.
This place is a great way to high school.
They are.
She was not for Best actresses here is
Mask on.
no one knows her. It's been I've been unpredictable.
Maybe they should be checking the border.
Right now, any one of the classes.
It's all up to each state. Whether or not they want to be done.
There's a turtle crossing. God, that's amazing.
You're doing a bit of traveling. You're in Minneapolis recently. Oh wait, oh, it's somebody else. I'm thinking wrong Instagram feed. I'm thinking of. Never mind. Who was that?
Very good. No, you're totally fine. I should introduce myself. Yeah.
I'm like, we're going to need a second round of credit.
Yeah, no worries. No worries.
It's sort of the longer story.
The normal rotation.
Yeah.
Very good. Tucker. Are you from Maryland?
My favorite.
Oh, okay.
I've never
It's just you.
Yeah.
But I'm not
Yeah.
sound about it. So, Jim Moscato, like, we talked about these guys. He's like, yeah, it's been a long time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh.
So he told me,
Yeah.
I watched it twice.
Yeah.
Told you, it's amazing. And if you want your best, but it's got the shirt on it. Hoover's on it. Oh, yeah.
It's a good way to keep track of it.
As the person who's been on the receiving end of
Slow your groove.
I was
Grooving
playing
with
some,
purpose.
I was playing some Talking Heads the other day, and
Oh,
someone
yeah.
said, "Who's this?" And I'm like, "No." Same as it ever was.
Yeah. I was playing Road to Nowhere.
Jonathan is like, "Who's this?" I'm like,
How did I
"Oh
get
Lord,
that?
who am I?"
What do you get here, Scotty? 45? I go 45. I think, of course, it depends on your camera, your JPEG creativity setting.
I don't have any creative setting.
Yeah. If it's neutral, 45 is very neutral. If you go any higher than 45, like the camera standard settings are pretty rich. But I have no wish to rob the speaker of her skin tone.
I'm a DC resident,
Okay.
You didn't need my key today, huh?
Huh?
You didn't need my key.
I have one somewhere in that
So, yeah,
bag.
we're just gonna do a rotation.
Ah.
Every once in a while, it's like the
Every 30 seconds to a minute. Whenever you guys feel comfortable,
Yeah.
just rotate.
After we did this.
After a full rotation, we gotta get the next one. You're in the position to lead the
Full
charge.
rotation has how many positions?
Oh, yeah.
They still open doors.
1, 2, 4 up here. 6 total.
I don't
Okay,
use
so
these.
six.
My car gets a DHT,
Okay.
my house gets a DHT, so I'm like.
I'm gonna,
I don't use these things.
Split when this starts, because I gotta get back to Gary on the Senate side.
I forgot my keys at home today, and I walked in
You
and I
can
was
split
like,
now then.
I get in my house with the code, my
There
garage
it
with
is.
the code.
Oh, my house is first, which is after the builder was done and like left, like, I don't own keys
Yeah.
right now, like, they're,
Thank you.
I'm sure they're.
Symbolic.
None of us have them.
Yeah, yeah,
So
right.
the house is.
That's pretty important. That's scary. It's like, you know.
Early 90s?
But yeah, no, you're right.
Early 90s. Oh my
That was
lord.
79.
No, it wasn't.
In your.
Yeah, it was.
That was that late?
You can give me a car.
Well, 79.
that old?
You probably heard it a lot.
You heard it all on the radio when you were growing up. That's why I
Because
thought
it
it
was
was
a
that.
new classic.
Cars below.
83?
Cars above.
See, I wasn't that off.
Thank you.
Oh, was it 83?
According to my, well, yeah, I don't doubt it.
83.
I saw them at the 9:30 club here.
Did you?
About 84.
Back when it was the 9
Almost
o'clock.
burning down my house.
Oh, yeah, I met her. Really? Yeah, she was a huge fan of this band, too.
Burning down
We
the
actually
house.
got together on one of her concerts way beforehand.
Yeah, what have they done lately?
That's it. What have they done lately? I don't want the best of. No. Save the best. That's the best of also.
Give them a call. How come this wasn't?
or now. Burning down the house was 83. Once in a lifetime was 80.
What I said, I said 80, did I say 79, 80?
Well, you said,
I said 79.
but you, the one you were, that wasn't, one, was that once in a lifetime? So it was 80? Yeah. 1980.
I only remember because I was at the height of my acutive powers.
Acuitive powers.
You know, my cognizance, I was in my early 30s.
I would argue that you're there now, Brett.
Thank you. Thank you.
Scotty,
Prevagen.
as Prevagen and crosswords. An occasional aperitif. I'll tell you what, no doubt about that.
Good morning, or good afternoon, I should say. I'm going to be joined today by Delegate Norton, by Speaker Pelosi, who is running a little late, by Chairwoman Maloney, who chairs the Committee of Jurisdiction, and by my dear, dear friend, former House member, former Governor of Delaware, and now, of course, the senior United States Senator from the state of Delaware. When I'm with Tom Carper or Lisa Blunt Rochester, I introduce myself as Steny Hoyer. I represent suburban Delaware. So we're very, very close. Tomorrow, once again, we will be considering legislation to assure that the 700,000 plus people who live in the District of Columbia are in fact equal citizens to all their brothers and sisters throughout the United States of America. That's what this issue is about. Equality of citizenship. The House will put that bill on the floor tomorrow morning. I have been proud to support D.C. Statehood, which is a civil rights issue for our country. Really, it's a civil rights issue, but it's an equal rights issue. Why should I, living some 50 miles from here, or Tom Carper living some 75 miles from here, 80 miles from here, be represented by 3 voting members, at least, of the Congress of the United States, and somebody who determines that they want to come to work for their government, and they move to Washington, D.C., lose their equality of citizenship. Yes, it's a civil rights, but equality of citizenship. That's a principle that we hold dear in the Constitution. In no other democratic nation in the world does the capital city of that nation not have a vote in their parliament. Now, our parliament is called the Congress. Think of that. In no other democratic nation in the world are their citizens treated unequally in terms of a vote in the parliament of their nation. I brought this legislation to the floor last year, and I'm proud to do so again tomorrow. I expect it will pass. I expect the overwhelming majority, if not 100%, I really do expect 100%, of Democrats to support this legislation. It is in our platform as a Democratic Party to treat the citizens of the District of Columbia as equal citizens of the United States of America. It will then go to the Senate. And I want to thank very, very sincerely my dear friend of, when did you come to the Congress?
400 years.
400 years. When did you come to the Congress, Tom?
82.
82. I came in 81. So, so we have worked together for 39 years. And he is a dear friend, and I am so proud of his leadership in the United States Senate on behalf of this legislation. I want to thank, of course, an extraordinary representative. I've served here for 40 years, and Walter Fauntleroy was the representative when I came here. And it was clear that Walter was frustrated because he didn't have a real role on the floor of the House of Representatives. He did a lot of great work, and he was a great advocate for the District of Columbia. But I have not seen any representative of the District of Columbia more conscientious, more engaged, more intimately involved in the daily workings of the Congress of the United States than Eleanor Holmes Norton, without the ability to vote. Now, I have extended, when I was first majority leader, and then the Republicans took it away, and now the right for Eleanor Holmes Norton and the representative Puerto Rico, American Samoa, Northern Marianas, Guam, to vote in the committee of the whole. But constitutionally, we can't do that in terms of the final passage. She needs to be a state. That's why I came. Eleanor and I really talked about it. I said, Eleanor, we really need to try to get you the vote. But I came to the conclusion that the only way to get the citizens treated equally of the District of Columbia is to extend statehood to them. And they are larger than 2 other states in our nation. So although Eleanor Holmes Norton will not be able to vote on the floor in the passage of this bill, she has been an extraordinary advocate. And she is the principal reason why so many of us are engaged in this issue. So Eleanor, thank you so much for your leadership. Let me now yield to the sponsor of this legislation and the warrior who's going to make it happen, Eleanor Holmes Norton.
Thanks very much to my good friend Steny Hoyer, our majority leader. I appreciate the strong initiative and support of our leaders that you see before us of the House and Senate for full equality for the residents of our nation's capital as we make final preparations for tomorrow's historic debate and vote, which all of them have worked to achieve. I especially thank Speaker Nancy Pelosi, Majority Leader Steny Hoyer, Chairwoman Maloney, and Senator Carper for standing together to ensure that the citizens of the District of Columbia are on their way to statehood in order to achieve equality with other American citizens and with the citizens of the capitals of every other democratic country in the world. In fact, please note the effect of what we're doing today. According to a detailed poll, now 54% of the American people support D.C. statehood. That is the result of the hearings which have told the American public what they did not know. They were confused. In fact, some Americans said they thought we had statehood. Many said they didn't know. Some said they were against it. But this latest very detailed poll shows that 54% support D.C. statehood, and I am predicting that as a result of tomorrow's vote and the hearings we have been having that educate the public, that percentage will even go up. Across the United States today, Americans are taking down the remnants of the Confederacy as symbols of inequality, just as the House of Representatives is rising up its nation's capital to ensure equality for all citizens. Not long after being elected to the House of Representatives, I got the first ever vote on D.C. statehood. Even with my party in power then, I did not succeed because there were some Democrats who opposed the bill. Today, however, Democrats from every section of the country are united on the principle that equal Equality of responsibility, such as paying federal income taxes, and the district is number 1 per capita in the United States in federal income taxes, and serving in the armed forces to defend our country, demand equal rights in return. My service in the Congress has been dedicated to achieving equality for the people I represent, which only statehood can provide. My life as a third-generation Washingtonian has marched toward this milestone, mindful that my own family has never known equality in our country. My great-grandfather, Richard Holmes, walked away from a slave plantation in Virginia. I continue to walk that got my family to freedom in this city until all of us who live today in the district go the full distance to achieve the prize of equal citizenship for all D.C. residents with statehood for the District of Columbia. I'm pleased now to introduce the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Speaker Nancy Pelosi.
Thank you very much, Congresswoman Eleanor Holmes Norton. How inspiring it is to hear you talk about your grandfather Holmes walking away from the plantation, and you continue that walk. You continue it for your family, you continue it for your district, you continue it for everyone in our country. Thank you for your tremendous leadership. And really, last year when we passed the bill, last Congress when we passed the bill, it was Congresswoman Eleanor Holmes Norton's reputation and the respect she commanded among our colleagues, but it was Steni's determination and insistence that the bill would be brought to the floor and that we would have the votes, and we celebrated. It was the first time that the House of Representatives had recognized and voted and supported statehood for the District of Columbia. I proudly wear this 51 hat. Now, so it's an honor to join Democrats from both sides of the Capitol. I'm pleased to welcome Senator Carper back over to the House side. Steny talked about serving with him all that time. I sat next to him in the financial, what was called banking in those days. It was so long ago it had a different name, the Banking Committee, and I remember celebrating the birth of his 2 sons. At that time, we're now in their 30s. You said 31, 32, like that. So it's been a long time friendship. So I've seen his championing of America's families for his own and others for a long time. And so pleased that he is the author of this important legislation from the first state, and now the 51st state. So it's an honor to join Democrats from both sides of the aisle and of course our persistent, relentless, determined chair of the Committee of Jurisdiction, Congresswoman Carolyn Maloney, who will not rest. Well, she wears it not only on her sleeve, but throughout. Vote. And there you go. Okay. By voting for D.C. statehood, the House of Representatives reaffirms this truth that all deserve a voice in our democracy. To hear Congresswoman Holmes Norton talk about equality for the people of the District of Columbia, equality because of equal representation in the Congress. I salute her, the patron saint of D.C. statehood. Thank her for her decades of persistent, dissatisfied leadership. H.R. 51 has a record-breaking number of original co-sponsors. Congratulations. Again, I thank our leader, Mr. Hoyer, has been relentless in this fight as well, Chair Carolyn Maloney and Chair Carper, the author of the legislation in the Senate. Our founders built our democracy on a simple promise that every American should have a voice in our government from City Hall to the halls of Congress. Washingtonians, as the Congresswoman said, pay taxes, fight in our wars, contribute to the economic might of our country. But for centuries, they have been denied their right to representation. What does the license plate say? taxation without representation is one of the manifestations. It is imperative that we correct this injustice, which is also a matter of civil rights and security. As last summer's protests in the January 6th insurrection made clear, D.C. must be empowered to protect its people. If District of Columbia were a state, the chief executive would have been able to call out the National Guard like any other head of a state in our country. Another reason for this to happen. To me, this was personal. Mr. Hoyer talked about his long-time relationships and his commitment to this idea. Eleanor Holmes Norton talked about her family and her commitment to this. We've been talking about Mr. Carper's children. To me, it's personal. When I was born, let's not go into that. My father was a representative from Baltimore, and he was chair of the District of Columbia Appropriations Subcommittee. Now, those of you who've been following this issue, because we've had many press conferences, have heard me tell this story many times. That position, chairman of the District of Columbia Subcommittee of Appropriations, made him what is called then the unofficial mayor of Washington, because of the authority the committee had over the district. He did not like that. He was a big believer of home rule. So I often say that statehood for the District of Columbia is in my DNA. If you come to my office, when you will be allowed to come to any of our offices, you will see his picture there with Eleanor Roosevelt. He, as chair of the committee, welcoming her, the first lady in American history to testify before Congress, and she testified about welfare conditions in the District of Columbia. Today, with H.R. 51, Congress is taking a significant step to enfranchise the people of D.C. and empower them to participate fully in our democracy. Again, we're excited that we will pass it, we will celebrate, and we hope that that momentum will help it pass in the Senate so that the president can sign it into law. And then to that end, we are very magnificently served by the respect that he commands and the commitment that he has to this issue of equality than our former House member, now chairman of the committee in the Senate, Tom Carper. I'm pleased to yield to him. Thank you. Oh, I was supposed to go to you first.
Okay. Callan's going to go first.
Oh, Callan's
Because we had Tom Carper's cleanup.
Oh, okay.
Because he's going to get it through the United States Senate.
I'm pleased to yield to the distinguished chair of the Committee of Jurisdiction, who long before she was chair of that committee had been a strong advocate for fairness for the District of Columbia.
Thank you so much. I am honored to be with all of you for this historic moment. I would first like to thank my dear friend and colleague on the Oversight Committee, Eleanor Holmes Norton, for her tenacity and sustained advocacy on behalf of the people she represents, the District of Columbia. I would also like to thank Speaker Pelosi and Majority Leader Hoyer for their commitment to putting this bill on the floor of the House for a second time in 2 years. Democrats have clearly stated the facts about the financial contributions that the residents of the District of Columbia have made to the United States. We have made the case as to why this must happen and why it should happen now. Unfortunately, there is not one single Republican co-sponsor on this important bill. Our Republican colleagues care more about partisanship than they do about giving 712,000 Americans their voting rights. Think about this argument. They are willing to violate the core principles of our democracy merely because the senators that D.C. elects may possibly be from a different party, and they publicly say that. Adding D.C. as a state should not be about politics. It is about equality and democracy, and Congress has a responsibility to ensure all Americans are given the full rights promised in our Constitution. Now is the time to right this historic wrong. It is time to finally give a voice to the Americans in the District of Columbia. I want to close by again commending Congresswoman Norton for her leadership and Speaker Leaders Pelosi and Hoyer. And I look forward to working closely with them to ensure that this historic legislation is finally signed into law. And I now turn it over to the great Senator Carper, who is going to pass it in the Senate.
Thank you, Madam Chair. To my friend Steny and to Eleanor, to our speaker, I wish that Nancy was still here. My wife Martha went into labor on with our first child, and about midnight, the night before a big banking committee hearing, actually a business meeting, and about 12 o'clock we headed for the hospital, midnight. And about 8 o'clock, 7 o'clock the next morning, the obstetrician came in to see how we were doing, and Martha was getting very close to delivering. He walked in, Sandy, and he said to me, he said, "What's going on in the Congress today, in the House of Representatives today?" Congressman, I started telling about the legislation we were voting on. My wife was there in labor, just about to deliver, and said, "How about me?" I mean, like, what am I, chopped liver? And maybe that captures a little bit the way some of the folks here in Washington, D.C. feel. How about me? How about me? I want to thank Steny and Eleanor, the chair, and the speaker. I want to thank you for your tenacity in not giving up on what is an important issue. People say to me, how did you ever get involved in this? Why do you care about this? Election night 2000, I got a phone call I'd won, and a phone call from Joe Lieberman. And he called to say, congratulations, we're longtime friends. Happy you won. And he said, you ought to try to get on a committee that I lead. And I said, what committee is that? He said, Governmental Affairs. And he said, you're an old treasurer, you're old governor, these are your kinds of issues, you'd like this. And he said, and it's a small committee, you might even get to be chairman someday. And he was right. I chose to get on the committee, enjoyed it a lot, and got to be chairman one day. He was the chairman, as it turned out, before me. He and Susan Collins actually took turns. One of the issues that he championed, many issues, but one of the issues that he championed was the District of Columbia. The District of Columbia. He was the original author, co-sponsor, sponsor actually, of legislation to provide the opportunity for people who live in this state, in this district, to actually be heard, have a voice that's heard in the House and in the Senate. I said, why is this so important to you? And he said, you know, 240 years ago, we fought a war against the mightiest nation on earth, and the reason why we fought the war was taxation without representation. He said it was wrong then, and it's wrong now. And he went on to remind me, he said, you know, the people of the District of Columbia pay more on a per capita basis in federal taxes than any other state in the nation. They pay more. He said 11,000 of them actually serve on active duty in the Army, Navy, the Air Force, Marines, and in the National Guard. And despite having one of the best credit ratings around, a AA+, better than most states, whenever they want to pass a budget, the Congress has to approve it. Don't forget that. The Congress has to approve it. And whenever the District of Columbia has a vacancy for a judge, the Congress has to approve it. If you have been following lately the mess that we make of judicial nominations in the Senate, you might wonder, are you kidding? Are you kidding? And not only to make matters worse, the judiciary will have judges, we'll have vacancies in judges in the District of Columbia, and they'll be vacant for weeks, for months, in some cases for years. It wreaks havoc on the judiciary, their ability to do their business, and to make sure that justice is done. I remember what Joe said to me. He said, this is wrong, we have to fix. I also would say, and Joe's deeply religious Jew, and he said to me, this is a violation of the golden rule. That's what he said. He said, this is a violation of the golden rule. Treat other people the way you want to be treated. I don't care if you're Jewish, I don't care if you're Protestant, if you're Catholic, you're Hindu, Muslim, Buddhist. The golden rule is in every one of them. The notion we ought to treat other people the way we want to be treated. The people of the District of Columbia should not be treated this way. We have the opportunity to do something about it, and we're going to. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator. Let me say that things are different today than they were last year. First of all, we have a President of the United States who says he wants to sign this bill. Secondly, we have a majority leader of the United States Senate who says he wants to see this bill passed. So we're not in the same position we were last year. We knew that Senator McConnell was not going to put the bill on the floor for the wrong reasons. And so we're very hopeful that we can move forward on this. Obviously, we're going to need some Republicans to vote principle rather than politics. Let's hope they do. Are there any questions?
This puts you in the same position as before, which is you're still gonna need 60 votes in the Senate to break the filibuster, so.
Well, at this point in time, we are in the same position. I am one who has said regularly, long before this year, that I thought that the filibuster was undemocratic and inconsistent with the founders' principles. I bet you could not find a single founder, a single writer of the Constitution of the United States who would have said the Senate cannot pass a bill by a majority vote. Not one. It is an artifice that was created for the minority to obstruct the majority, to obstruct the will of the people. I hope that the filibuster is jettisoned. It is not a democratic principle that a minority can impede and stop, not just impede, but stop the majority. So I think your observation is correct in that sense. I think we need to get rid of the filibuster, and I hope that the United States Senate does that.
Could I say something?
Let me add, and then yield to Ms. Norton, that I do believe the Senate, the founders did believe that the Senate would be a institution in which there would be longer debate, and I think that ought to be maintained. But it ought not to be carried to the extent where the people's will cannot be implemented. Eleanor?
Actually, I'm very hopeful about the Senate. If you will notice, the Senate held up organizing this session. They held up organizing because of the filibuster. And it wasn't the filibuster for the District of Columbia, it was the filibuster period. They finally did organize, but remember that we've gotten rid of the filibuster for everything except legislation. We got rid of it for nominations. We don't do any filibusters for anything now except legislation, so it's on its last legs. So with the movement of the filibuster, there will be movement for D.C. statehood, and I do believe that the filibuster is on its way out.
Mr. Hoyer, I'm sorry, Ms.
No,
Long,
no.
did you have a comment? I'm sorry.
No, no.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Mr. Hoyer.
Good.
That said, and I'd like to hear from you as well on this, Ms. Norton. The idea that this bill, as you say, faces this 60-vote threshold in the Senate. You have other pieces of legislation, firearms, George Floyd bill, passed here, trouble over there. As you continue to stack up this bill, isn't this part of a strategy, a tactic to pressure wavering Democrats across the building to say, okay, let's get rid of the filibuster, let's modify the filibuster so you can advance some of these goals, to stack up those bills next door?
Chad, let me say this. Our strategy is to pass bills that we think the people of the United States will be advantaged by and support. And that's what we've been doing. Every piece of legislation we sent in the last Congress, every piece of legislation we've sent in this first quarter, which is a very, very substantive number of bills, we believe represent what the majority of the American people want. That's our strategy, and you are correct. Hopefully, at some point in time, the people themselves will say to the United States Senate, and their representatives in the United States Senate will say, it is undemocratic, with a small d, it is un-American to have the minority hold the majority hostage. So our strategy is to pass good bills that we believe in, that we believe are good policy for our country, and hope that the Senate will through the majority vote, enact the people's will. Carolyn, do you want to say something about that?
No, I
okay.
just leave, you clearly stated it, yes.
Yes.
Following up on that point, obviously you want the result, but given the fact that if it does get to the Senate, how important is it to at least be a symbolic vote that actually takes place, because it's been so long since it's been able to even
I think
reach
it's a-
the Senate floor? And also, are you concerned at all that a few Democrats would not support DC statehood?
Well, I hope that any Democrat that has reservation will think very carefully about it in whatever state they represent, that if their state was up for admission as a member of the United States, 51 states, that they would want members to approve their admission to the United States. That's what we're talking about, so that, you know, I some years ago, in '93, as Eleanor knows, had reservations about statehood, not because I was not for fully empowering and having 2 senators and a voting representative in the House, but because I thought the difficulty of getting it enacted was so great that we really ought to focus on getting, at least as a start, the representative, Eleanor Holmes Norton, the vote on the floor of the House of Representatives. However, I've concluded the only way to do that is admit the District of Columbia or Washington Frederick Douglass Commonwealth to the United States. But I think, you know, I think ultimately, if that becomes a possibility, then I think we'll have the votes.
Last question?
Yeah, I guess to follow up on that, you know, specifically, there are 4 Democrats who are not yet co-sponsoring this in the Senate. And Senators Mark Kelly and Angus King said today that they're still holding fast to not yet co-sponsoring it. What is the case to somebody from a small state like Angus King or like Joe Manchin that you would make for them to vote for this?
It's the right thing to do. That may sound like a simplistic, naive argument, but that's the argument I would make. That we have 712,000 people, otherwise known as about 200,000 more than Wyoming has, who are less than full citizens of this country. And that may, as I say, sound like a naive and simplistic argument, but it's the right thing to do. I concluded that, and I would hope that members, now the fact that they haven't sponsored it, of course, does not mean they're not going to vote for it. You understand that, of course. I think that if this comes to the floor, they'll have a decision to make. You make a good judgment about it. We knew McConnell was not going to bring it to the floor. Chuck Schumer may well bring it to the floor and have people stand up and vote against the vote, or otherwise known as stealing the vote from 712,000 citizens who are just as much American citizens as I am or anybody else in the Congress of the United States is. And they ought to have the same rights, equal representation in the Congress. So that's the argument I would make, and I'm sure Eleanor Holmes Norton will make that argument very, very forcefully and very effectively. And I think the residents of the District of Columbia will make that fight. The reason we've gone from less than 50% support to more than 54% is because they're making that argument all over the country. Last question. Well, 2, I'll go quickly.
Have you heard from Democratic leadership in the Senate on plans to either bring it to a committee or to the floor?
Well, the committee, you've heard from the committee chairman.
Yeah.
Now, the rule in the Senate, as you know, they're divided 50-50. And the rule is if they can't get a positive vote on a bill, it comes to the floor without recommendation. I have not talked to Schumer about this, but I do intend to talk to Mr. Schumer and to Mr. Durbin about bringing this bill to the floor. So that, as you point out, what?
Mr. Schumer supports the bill.
Yeah.
I understand that. I was wondering specifically whether there would, be some kind of vote on it in
I hope that, I will urge that there be a vote on it. I will urge that people have to stand up and say, I am for or against treating 712,000 citizens of the District of Columbia as equal citizens in the United States of America. Last question.
Mr. Leader, thank you. Question on police reform, if I may. I'm just wondering if you think that there's any room for compromise on qualified immunity. Senator Scott seems to think there's a bipartisan path to putting more responsibility, more liability on agencies and departments rather than on individual officers.
Look, we passed Justice and Policing, as you know, on June 26th or 5th of last year. We passed it about a month after George Floyd was murdered. We had a historic day yesterday in America where a jury of his peers held accountable somebody who acted in a way that led to the death of George Floyd. We believe the bill that we sent was a good bill, and that accountability was provided for in that bill. The Senate will now have to work its will. I hope it does work its will. I hope it brings that bill to the floor. I hope it gets 60 votes. We do not expect in the House that, I've been abandoned, that the legislation that we adopt will be taken whole by the United States Senate. They're going to have their own ideas and their own views, and they will amend it. And then we'll have a conference. But hopefully, in the next few months, we will pass a justice and policing bill that will ensure greater confidence among the American people that those who serve them as law enforcement officers, the overwhelming number of which serve with great courage and with great concern for their fellow citizens. But when that doesn't happen, we need to have accountability, and we hope that a bill passes to effect that end. Thank you all very much.
Completely unrelated about coronavirus restrictions.
You can send it to me.
Okay.
I'm Margaret.
Well, I mean, yeah. Okay. Do you know Mo Brooks said he's opening his office to constituents, and he posted a picture, a bunch of people not wearing masks. Is that in line? Like, and if so, why hasn't any Republican who opposes all these restrictions done that? Like, the reason I question is because why just now? There hasn't been a change in the rules. Like, is he allowed to do that?
Yeah, you should definitely send me an
Okay,
email.
I'll follow
and
up.
I'll get back to you.
Okay.
Okay, cool.